on such an important bill, which the Honorable Prime Minister has brought for study and for debate. We all know that any electoral reform that is proposed, whether in Mauritius or elsewhere, carries with it lots of debates, lots of difficulties, and it is very hard to obtain a consensus on anything. This is why I believe the Honorable Prime Minister needs to be congratulated for having brought it to the House to be debated, and before bringing it to the House, he also gave a press conference announcing all the measures that he was proposing to put in the bill. So there has been adequate opportunity in the country, in the media, and in the House since Friday last to debate this issue. Madam Speaker, it is significant that today is the 10th of December, 2018, exactly 4 years ago, we had the general elections in 2014. It is also significant that this year is also the 50th anniversary of our independence, and we are trying on this side of the House to bring major changes to a system that, rightly or wrongly, has served us well over the years. Madam Speaker, quite a number of honourable speakers, both on this side and the other side, have already spoken, and I will try to address myself to the basic provisions contained in the bill, but of course I will need to reply to some of the other things that have been discussed in the House. Madam Speaker, any reform that is brought in any country creates difficulties for politicians and for the public, even in countries that have a homogeneous population. There are difficulties. But when we bring a reform in a multi-ethnic society like Mauritius, the difficulties are even worse. And this is why we have to look at this bill with a great deal of compassion for what has happened and how we want this country to be taken forward in the future. This is not the first time in the history of Mauritius that reforms for elections are being addressed. And in fact, quite a number of honourable members have spoken about the history of electoral reforms that have been brought. But before I go to that, because we are in a democracy, and because we need to know that in Parliament we can have very rigorous debate. We can disagree with what honourable members are saying, but we need to have respect. And this is why I'm going to ask a question to this House. Who knows what is the distance between the government benches and the opposition benches? There's a symbolism about it, and there's a philosophy. It is 2 swords and 1 inch. The reason being that politicians can be at daggers drawn, but they should not draw daggers. And this is why I believe that democracy is so important, not only for Mauritius, but for all countries, and this is why this debate is so important. Madam Speaker, in 2014, I'm referring to this because the honourable member who spoke before me was instrumental in bringing the alliance between the Labour Party and the MMM to fruition. He was the go-between. He knows of all people. I wasn't going to use the word agua, but agua par excellence. So he knows how difficult it is to address the issue of electoral reform. I did not use the word. Okay. If it is going to create any, I withdraw it. I withdraw it. But I want to say that, Madam Speaker, that when the Labour Party and the MMM alliance published their electoral alliance agreement, there was something about electoral reform. And I quote from that document. Our two parties have reached agreement on introducing electoral reform in Mauritius. The main features of the electoral reform agenda are to ensure government stability, to consolidate democracy, to enhance party fairness, on a broad-based socio-demographic inclusion, and to promote fairer gender representation. More specifically, we have agreed as follows: to retain the current first past the post formula with 23-member constituencies in the island of Mauritius, to have 3 constituency MPs from Rodrigues, to introduce 20 party lists so as to ensure party and gender fairness, and to subsume the current BLS into a new dispensation for rainbow representation, to provide that no more than 2/3 of candidates are from the same sex, to establish a minimum threshold of 10% of national votes to be eligible for party lists, to give the option to parties to field double candidacies, to return party list MPs from either one single party list or 2 separate party lists. This is what we are saying, the 10%. Now, Honorable Ganu wants 5%. I can understand why. But it is his legitimate wish to suggest an amendment to the 10%, but he was party to the 10%. He negotiated that. There must have been a basis for 10%. And when we look at all the reports, whether from Banwell, Sachs, Carcassonne, Sitanen, everybody proposed 10%. And there are various reasons why 10%, because 10% prevents the small fringe right-wing or radical parties to field candidates and to be part of the mainstream politics. We want to discourage that. We want everybody to be part of the mainstream politics. So 5%, Honorable Ganu agreed to this, and he defended it. And Madam Speaker, one of the criticisms that has been leveled against this, the proposal of the Honorable Prime Minister is the role of the party leaders. I must say that the agreement itself doesn't address the issue of party leaders, the role of party leaders. However, when the Constitution Declaration of Community Temporary Provisions Bill was presented in the House in 2014, the then Prime Minister, in his second reading, said the following. As I said, I'm quoting from part of his statement. As I said, Mr. Speaker, the bill is practically ready, except on second thought. There are some alternate proposals that we think could be included to give parties options to choose from. And that was at a time when the Assembly had been closed for 9 months to discuss electoral reform. Honorable Boulel was saying we could have brought the reform, but you closed the Assembly. The Assembly was closed. But anyway, that is not passing. For example, and I'm continuing with the previous Prime Minister's statement. For example, we think parties can have the option of double candidacies if they want it. If they don't use it. We also think that for the 20 additional seats, there could be 2 lists, a list A and a list B, 14 to be chosen from list A, 6 from list B by party leaders for the list B, or alternatively, we think it's possible to have only 1 list of 20 from which 6 will be chosen from the leaders. This is what he said. So where's the difference between what we're proposing and what they propose? This is exactly what they said. And Honorable Ganu was party. He voted for this. He supported it fully. And today, we hear lots of things about party leaders. It's a travesty of democracy, dictatorship of party leaders. But let us face facts, Madam Speaker. Let us face facts. since the existing system has been operational. All party leaders, without any exception, have made sure that in their list of 60 candidates, there is fair representation of all segments of all communities. From 1967 until today, there is that unwritten formula of 36, 16, 9, 1. This has always been the case. Party leaders have been acting responsibly, whether they are in government or out of government, but party leaders are party leaders because they have that sense of the nation. Because any parliament must represent what the people want it to be and must represent the composition of the nation. Everybody out there must see reflected in the House their own sense of belonging. This is what Parliament is all about. And this is why I believe that the reforms that are being brought, Madam Speaker, are very important for the continued thriving of our democracy. So I need not dwell more on what Honorable Ganu negotiated with the then Labour Party with regard to electoral reform. Well, I was quiet when you were speaking.
You have had 1 hour to...
I was But history being history, Madam Speaker. In fact, when everybody started thinking very strongly about PR, proportional representation, it was when we had the first 60-0. Before that, no one even envisaged the possibility of a 60-0, because the Constitution was drafted in such a way that there would be a government, an opposition, but the first 60-0 really focused the minds of all people. And this is also important because we need to have a system that is fair. We need to have a system first past the post, which is the will of the people. They elect the 60 candidates, and that will of the people must not be frustrated. When Sachs reported that we could have 30 PR seats, there were simulations made. And when there were only 2 parties, that would not have frustrated the will of the people. But if there were more parties, the will of the people would have been frustrated by the allocation of PR seats. So it is a very sensitive issue. Are we in this House going to frustrate what the people have decided on first past the post? It is easy to say that there has to be a fair representation of the votes that have been cast for the opposition parties. Fair enough. But not to the detriment of stability. This is what we are saying. We want a system that is stable, that will allow a government to function, that will not be subject to any kind of manigance with a view to having transfuge. And since I'm talking about transfuge, Honorable Ganu this morning said quite a number of things about transfuge. Honorable Ganu, in 2014, was a candidate with the MMM Labour Party alliance. He was elected on that ticket. Where is he now? Is he a transfuge? Does transfuge? I'm going to give you the code. I'm going to give you the definition. I'm going to give you a definition. No, Larousse. I'll give you the definition. Because transfugist does not necessarily mean somebody from the opposition crossing the floor to the side.
Honorable Ganu.
It doesn't only mean that. let me give you.
Honorable Ganu, could you keep interrupting the Honorable Minister? He didn't interrupt you when you were speaking.
Madam Speaker, I went to Laos. Where else would I go to find the definition of transfuge? And this is, it comes from the Latin word transfuga. Defugere veut dire fuir. C'est un soldat qui déserte et passe à l'ennemi, personne qui abandonne un parti, une doctrine pour se rallier à une autre.
Honorable Ganu, you will continue to interrupt. In spite, this is the second time I am drawing attention that there should be no comments from a sitting position. The honourable member has all the right to express his opinion. You have expressed yours, and he is expressing his.
Anyway,
he's a transfuger.
I don't mind giving this definition to my friend. Honorable Ganu is my friend. We were at college together.
He got his dictionary Latin.
Honorable Ratna, please don't add fuel to fire.
But when I was listening to the debates, I was appalled, Madam Speaker, by what I heard the young members of the House say. They were harping on communal politics, on the days when people were adhering to a party simply on communal grounds. We have moved from that era. We could also play the communal game. In fact, Madam Speaker, if you go to Hansard in your library, there are cases of debates when the debate was about whether or not to give the right to vote to the coolies, to the Hindus. Do you know what was said? Are we meaning those who were there in power, are we going to sit next to a Hindu whose hair is filled with oil and lice dripping from his hair on his face? That was the kind of debate that was being had in this House. We can also play that communal game, Madam Speaker. But we don't want to play it because we want our country to be a modern country where everybody feels that he has a right to be here and a right to participate in every aspect of national life. This is what we want. This is why we are not going to trouble the ground of communalism. And this is why, Madam Speaker, I hope that the young members of the House will think about their place in history and will make amends by not adopting communal instincts. And I also want to say something about Honorable Shakir Mohammed, who unfortunately is not here, but I'll wait for him to come back to say to his face. So I will come back to him if he comes while I'm still speaking, Madam Speaker. This is why on this side of the House we think that this bill is something that is necessary to modernize our electoral system, to undo the injustices of first past the post system, to bring a dose of PR, to allow for fairer gender representation, and to have anti-defection clauses. But politics being politics, we will have elections, and sometimes general elections are fought while respecting the other side. Sometimes they are fought with a great deal of hostility between the opposing parties. In 2005, Madam Speaker, there was the MSM government, and Honorable Béranger was the Prime Minister leading the party into the elections. I may disagree with Honorable Paul Béranger on many grounds, but I have a lot of sympathy because he suffered as a result of communal comments regarding his prime ministership. You know what the Labour Party said in the campaign in 2005? Pouvoir pe sabdan dulame. Pouvoir pe sabdan dulame. And that was, pouvoir, now he's talking when he should have spoken that when you went to challenge Navin Ramgoolam. There you should have spoken. There. Huh? I was elected in 1983
now it's your turn.
I was elected.
You will have the opportunity also to address the House. Fortunately.
First is Bab Bechwa. But anyway, Honorable Boulel should know. Yeah, you know that this kind of campaign is not what a modern Mauritius wants. Let us fight on ideas. We can fight on so many issues, but fighting on the color of skin of a leader of a party is unacceptable. This is why I say, I hope that this kind of campaign will never take place again. Madam Speaker, I said earlier on that all countries have different electoral systems and they all are not happy with the system. Let me take the case of the United States. The United States has a mode of election of the president, which is based on the popular vote, but also on the electoral college. At the last presidential elections, Hillary Clinton won on the popular vote. She had about 3 million more votes than Donald Trump, who was the candidate of the Republicans. But Donald Trump was made the president because of the vote of the Electoral College. Now, what is the Electoral College? Each state has a number of votes. And the states need not have the same number of people in each state. And all states, all Senate, in the Senate, there are 2 representatives from each state, irrespective of the size of the state. There is now a debate in the United States whether to address this issue, but that is their problem, not our problem. We also have other systems. In Fiji, which is very similar to Mauritius, in Fiji, they have a single constituency of the country. For a party to be eligible to participate in the PR seats, they need to have 5% of the votes. In Sri Lanka, it is a bit like Mauritius. But there are problems everywhere we go because people are never happy with any system. And this is why, Madam Speaker, when we address the issue of electoral reform, we have to understand that our people, Mauritians, are used to the system that we have. And when I read the papers, when I listen to the media, and on that one I agree with Honorable Ganu, that there is, in public opinion, a degree of hostility, let me say, about an increase in the number of MPs because of the costs involved. I hoped that the media would address this issue in a responsible way by saying, if we want to correct the injustice of the first past the post, we need to have an increase of MPs. Because under the existing system, we can't do it. But that's not what we see in the media. The media is focusing on how much it is going to cost per MP, how much it is going to cost per year, how much it is going to cost for the 5 years. That is totally irresponsible. And this is why, Madam Speaker, I hope that when the time comes for the vote to be taken, everybody in this House will understand the importance of the vote that they will be casting, and that they will do what they have to do because it is important for the country. Now, Speaker, there is consensus on lots of issues in this House. I have mentioned some of them. On the issue of the existing system of first past the post, we agree. On the PR, we agree. It seems to me that the MMM is not agreeable on the numbers, whether it is 12 or 14, but we don't know whether that is a major impediment for them to vote. We agree that there is a need to subsume the BLS into the system that we are proposing. Now, what does subsume mean? Does subsume mean abolition? Does subsume mean absorb in the system? What does it mean? Sachs talks about it. We all talk about it. The MMM Labour Party agreement talks about it. But we have not defined exactly what we mean by subsume. Because the BLS, Madam Speaker, is a sensitive issue. Unless all communities in the country feel that they are happy or they will be able to live with the proposals, it will not be something that will be acceptable to everybody. This is why the party leaders, not only in this government, but even in the agreement of the Labour Party and the MMM, the party leaders had that role to ensure that the BLS, if done away with, would not create difficulties for the adequate and fair representation of all communities in the country. Is it something which is so unreasonable for everybody in this House to accept? Because with the existing BLS system, with a case at the UN Human Rights Committee, with the cases in court, with résistance and alternative, it is going to be difficult to do otherwise than to do away with the BLS. Unless we have another system, but no one has been able to think of another system yet. Madam Speaker, this is an issue that I believe the party leaders, in the way they have conducted themselves since 1967, they have shown that they are taking on board the concerns of every community. There is no reason to doubt that this will continue to be the case in the future. I believe that this is something that is important to reassure everybody that we are not doing something which is going to undermine or cause any kind of discomfort to any segment of the population. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Adrien Duval, when he spoke, he said something about the Deputy Prime Minister, that the Deputy Prime Minister had requested or asked the Leader of the Opposition to come and campaign for him in constituency number 19, otherwise he would not have been elected. Just imagine. In fact, I'm informed by the Deputy Prime Minister that he did ask the Leader of the Opposition to come for a meeting. But that was for the candidate of the PMSD, who in fact was not elected. That was the reason. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Ganu, at the end of his statement, he made certain suggestions, And he thought of having a new formula parce que la boîte à outils est là. Carcassonne had said so. But if it was there, why didn't Carcassonne put it in his report? Where is that boîte à outils? Political scientists all over the world will differ on what is the best system, because no country is the same. Mauritius is unique in terms of the system that we have. One just has to go back to all the reports from 1885 until today. Everybody says that there is no perfect electoral system. And now I understand that from Honorable Ganu that it is possible to have a perfect electoral system. Honorable Boulel says that withdraw the bill. Withdraw the bill, let us have another kind of exercise. Madam Speaker, we must face the music. The bill has come to the House. People will have to vote. After the debates, we take the decisions that we need to take. Government considers that this is the minimum acceptable electoral reform that is going to pave the way for a better system, to undo the damage that first past the post does with regard to adequate representation. But there is no magic formula in elections. And this is why I believe that boîte à outils is something that will remain a boîte à outils, because it will not be able to generate any kind of system that will be acceptable to everybody. He also proposed the elimination of additional seats, but I believe that he understands why the additional seats, with the party leaders choosing, is important for ensuring the harmony and the cohesion of society. He also suggested the 5% to be eligible for PR. I think that also is not possible, because we all have agreed on the 10%. Speaker, now that Honorable Shakil Mohammed is here, if I may just take this. Madam Speaker, Honorable Shakil Mohammed, when he intervened, he took me to task for having at one stage said that for the first time in the history of the Labour Party, a non-Hindu was heading the Labour Party in the House. Now, I said so because it's a historical fact. There has never been a leader of the Labour Party in the House except a Hindu. I'm talking of post-independence. But when I started looking at what Shakil Mohammed himself has said, he was asked, he gave an interview, and he was asked, vous visez une position dans la hiérarchie du parti, qu'il s'agisse du leadership ou d'un autre poste? And what does he answer? Ce qui est triste, c'est que vous ne pensez même pas que je puisse devenir leader. J'ai tout de même évoqué le terme leadership dans ma question. Non, 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 non. Vous n'avez pas pensé leader, mais leadership, une position dans la hiérarchie. Vous ne m'avez pas demandé pourquoi ce ne serait pas moi le leader. Et vous savez pourquoi? C'est parce que tout le monde pense qu'il faut un hindou à la tête du Parti travailliste. C'est là où tout est faussé. Quand est-ce que l'ability primera-t-il sur l'aspect community? L'idée que Shakil Mohammed devienne un jour le leader du Parti travailliste ne vous a jamais traversé l'esprit. Et vous avez raison. Moi non plus. Je ne pense pas que je puisse devenir le leader du Parti travailliste. Then he gives another interview to Eshan Dinali and another Adila Maurice, and he says, dans quelques années, si Dieu le veut, et si j'ai le soutien de la population et du parti, pourquoi pas aspirer à être numéro 1? It is legitimate. Oh, it is perfectly legitimate. And then he gives another interview to Cédric Ramasso on the leadership du Parti travailliste. Shakil Mohamed change son fusil d'épaule. Il revient sur ses propos. Shakil Mohamed affirme que seul Navin Ramgoolam pourra mener le parti à la victoire. Contrairement à ce qu'il avait dit en 2015, just like when there was the abortion bill, you spoke against it and you voted with the government.
Yeah, you should check his notes. I never spoke against it, and I assume that what I did, I voted for it, and I spoke for it. Check his notes back.
Okay, if I'm mistaken, I make amends.
Please.
But let me complete on Shakil. Let me complete on Shakil Mohamed, Honorable Shakil Mohamed. When he speaks to Cédric Ramassoumi, il revient sur ses propos, etc. En 2015, il avait dit que Navin Ramgoolam devait céder sa place en raison de ses casseroles. Le député rouge affirme désormais que les attaques contre l'idée sont sans fondement, etc., etc. Now, changing from one to the other, a matter of principle, and talking about communal matters.
He opened the debate.
Madam.
That is the relevance. He opened the debate.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, he keeps.
Honorable Shakil Mohamed, are you defying what I have said?
I'm saying I don't agree with you.
Yes.
I don't have to agree.
I have. Please resume your seat. You opened the debate, and that is why he is replying.
I did not. And I do not agree with you.
You can say whatever you want, but from a sitting position.
You want me to stand up? I'll do.
Yes.
I do not agree with you, Madam Speaker,
Yes,
and I
okay.
say it respectfully.
So,
Thank you very much, Madam.
What I will do is that I will suspend the session, I'll check from the records what you said, and I'll come back with a ruling. I suspend the session. Honourable members, I have perused the unrevised version of the verbatim report of the intervention of Honourable Shakil Mohamed in the course of the debate on the Constitution Amendment Bill on Friday, 7th of December 2018. Honourable Shakil Mohamed is reported to have said, I quote, I wonder whether he recalls one of the very first speeches that a member, senior-most member of his political party, made in this August Assembly. Was Honourable Gayan, when he pointed at me, sitting in front as the chef de file of the Labour Party, as the parliamentary leader of the Labour Party, and said that he finds it totally bizarre, and that really struck him how come the parliamentary leader of the Labour Party today is a non-Hindu but a Muslim. How come? And he said that it is recorded in Hansard. In the circumstances, I rule that the Honorable Minister is entitled to rebut the argument of Honorable Shakil Mohammed in respect of his good self. However, I would request honorable members to exercise restraints in their interventions and not to make personal attacks. Thank you. Honorable member, you may proceed, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish not to take too long in my concluding remarks, but I need to say a few things because we are dealing with a matter which is pregnant with history. I understand that it was mentioned that the Comité d'Action Musulman was always a sort of a party that was not communal based. There was a report of Banwell, and I'm referring to paragraph 22 of that report, which reads as follows. There are lots of other things, but we think that the fundamental character of the electoral system should, as far as possible, not prejudge the issue of whether parties will seek and find support across community lines by assuming that they will not, but it must try to provide some insurance against the failure of parties to do so by removing the fear that the electoral system will so magnify the power of majorities as to jeopardize entrenched constitutional rights. We were glad to know that with the exception of the MCA, the Muslim party, the main parties stated the intention of making an appeal to all sections of the population. So if there was any doubt to be dispelled, I think this is clear that the Comité d'Action Musulman was a party purely on communal grounds. The other thing that I need also to say for the sake of history is that the Muslims and the Chinese were used to having seats in the House as nominated members. And this is why in all the constitutional reports that we have been considering, they were asking for reservation of seats for their specific communities. And this is something that was rejected by the main parties at the time, the Labour Party, the PMSD, but the Labour Party and the IFB then accepted that reservation of seats could be okay if it was a temporary measure, not a permanent feature of the system. We must also say, Madam Speaker, that we have come so far, and we are glad that we have come so far in a spirit of harmony and in full democracy. But it was not always easy. And this is why I will urge the young members of the House to know something about history. Madam Speaker, I have borrowed a book from the library upstairs, which deals with, the title is Sir Siswagar Ramguram, Battles for a Democratic Constitution of Mauritius. And this book travels all the gamut of reports from 1885 until recent times. And there were, then the governor was making suggestions, there were the parties that were making suggestions to electoral reforms, but there was a lot of things happening which could have derailed the country in terms of communal strife. I just wish to quote, with your permission, Madam Speaker, what one Dr. Rouen said, and I'm quoting from page 110 of this book written by Paladran Saran, and I quote, Le docteur Rouen considère que les propositions faites par le gouverneur au sujet du sens électoral sont libérales. La Constitution de 1886 a été l'objet de beaucoup de critiques venant de la communauté indienne. Avec ce que propose le gouverneur, la population indo-mauricienne obtiendra le droit de vote dans une mesure de plus en plus grande, avec l'expansion de l'instruction dans la colonie. Le docteur Rouen dit que tout dans la nature se développe par degrés successifs. L'évolution graduelle est une loi biologique. Le docteur Rohan s'excuse de faire des comparaisons d'ordre scientifique, mais cela est dû à la formation de son esprit et aussi aux observations qu'il a faites dans la vie politique. Le docteur Rohan parle des phases de développement dans le cas d'un insecte, le papillon. La larve informe devient chrysalide. Et la chrysalide en s'ouvrant un jour donne naissance à un petit insecte qui cessait à voler et qui deviendra bientôt un beau papillon. L'évolution politique d'un pays doit se faire par degrés. Madam Speaker, and then he goes on to say, le docteur Rohan dit que le sens de l'instruction tel qu'il est contenu dans le plan du gouverneur est une chose qui a sa nécessité. Il est nécessaire que le votant puisse lire son bulletin de vote, qu'il puisse exercer quelques discernements afin de ne pas voter des charlatans et des non-valeurs. Il ne faut pas encourager à l'élection de charlatans politiques. This is the kind of language that was being used when we were developing the electoral system of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, this is why I believe that it is very important for all of us to understand that from property qualifications to be an elector, from literacy tests, from all sorts of other tests, we have come a long way. And this is why we should not jeopardize what we have achieved. And this is why I think that what the PMSD is trying to do with regard to a census for the BLS is very dangerous. All the main political parties have rejected that, and I'm glad that that is the case. And the census will be a backward, retrograde step, which is not consonant with what Mauritius is today. Madam Speaker, let me say also that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was chairing the Ministerial Committee. I was a member of that Ministerial Committee. He chaired it until he resigned. We had lots of meetings, lots of discussions. And at no stage during the time when he was chairing that committee did he raise the issue of the census or boundaries. At no stage. And had he done so, we'd have convinced him. But he did not. So I think that it is...
Madam Speaker, this Honourable Minister has just referred to the workings and the deliberations in the Ministerial Committee. If I'm not mistaken, this report of the Ministerial Committee and the proceedings, minutes of proceedings, were never made public. So he is now divulging confidential information to the House. Unless, if he's done so now, so I request that he tables the document for us to be able to verify what he's saying. Because he cannot divulge...
It's for the Honourable Minister, who was a member of that committee, to decide whether he wants to provide that information to the House or not. If he wants to provide that part of information, I think he takes his entire responsibility. And this is my ruling, and it is final, and I would ask the Honourable Minister to proceed with his speech.
Well, if I'm not speaking the truth, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is there. He will be able to correct me. He will have the opportunity to say that. But I have said what I have said from personal knowledge. And I'm saying it, Madam Speaker, because the PMSD today is doing what it is adopting the standard it adopted at the Banwell Commission report. I'm referring to paragraph 25 of that report. And I quote, "It is true that Muslims and Chinese have grown accustomed to special representation by means of nomination. Moreover, we accept the view that in a country which is contemplating the prospect of independence, it is undesirable that any section of the population should feel that its legitimate political aspirations are frustrated by the electoral system. We do not, however, think that legitimate aspirations should include a mathematically exact representation of communal groups in the assembly, still less one secured by reservation. That was the stand being adopted then by the PMST. So I believe that there has been no motion with regard to the thinking, with regard to the progress that has been achieved in the country, and this is why I'm very happy that all the major political parties have rejected the census issue. Madam Speaker, in the bill that is before us, there is a provision regarding to the mandatory declaration of community when you stand for as a candidate for the general elections. I think this is in keeping with what is happening at the United Nations and before the courts. And it is also important that we build together the Mauritian nation and we do not give any assistance to any person who wishes to incite communal hatred of any kind at this stage in our development. We have reached a level of development which is, I think, very appreciable, which is something that is which is appreciated by all the countries in Africa and in the world. We should not take any decision that might derail that progress by adopting things which are communal or anti-patriotic. We believe that we need really now to work for the next 50 years on a system which will be fair, which will give to any Mauritian a sense of belonging to its members in the House, and a system of elections that will really be responsive to the needs of future Mauritius. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry if I have, in the course of my address, said a few things which were tough, but they had to be said, because it is important for the whole of Mauritius to understand that when we are adopting a system for elections, we want it to stand the test of time. We want it to be accepted by everybody so that everybody understands it, and a system that is not understood by the people will not be workable. So we want a system that is simple, that is fair, that provides adequate representation to all segments of our population, but it should also make sure that by the adoption of a PR system, the will of the people is never frustrated. So this is why in the bill, we ensure that whatever has been the result of the first past the post must not be disturbed by the application of any other system. Madam Speaker, of course, in a bill of this nature, we cannot have consensus in the country and in the House, but this is a very important bill for the future development of our country, and I will certainly be voting in favor of the bill. And thank you, Madam Speaker.